Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and live streamed. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Morrow and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn live video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is jazz guitarist Anthony Wilson, whose new album, House of the Singing Blossoms, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Simeon. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to see you.
Anthony, so tell us a little bit about where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a professional jazz guitarist.
Okay. Well, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. I grew up in the 1970s. I was born in 1968. And my father was a jazz musician himself. His name was Gerald Wilson. And so I was constantly in communication with jazz just through him, because he was listening to it on the radio, because he was composing at the piano or playing his trumpet. He was a trumpeter in the house. And so I heard these sounds and was very compelled by them, even as a very small boy. Even though as I got into music in the 70s, I was listening to popular music and rock music and soul music of the day. But the jazz stuck with me. And my mother was just a huge music fan, and her record collection had everything from Charlie Parker to Ravi Shankar to Jack Kerouac reading his poetry to collections of Eric Satie music and Debussy, country music, bluegrass. So between all of this, I was just immersed in music, and Los Angeles was a great music environment in the 1970s. You know, you had the kind of Laurel Canyon sound, people like Joni Mitchell and Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Neil Young was around, and Robbie Robertson, the band, and I had friends at school who were sort of part of that milieu. Their parents played rock music, and so it was, and or were managers for bands. Neil Young's son and Cher's daughter, now son, Chaz Bono, grew up. We all went to school together. So it was just in the air, and I developed a love for music very early. And since I picked up the guitar first, it just felt like the thing to continue with. Playing my dad's instrument, the trumpet, that was a whole thing, you know, pressing this thing up against your face and just the whole thing of it. Even though I kind of I got a hang of it, it was not my thing. And I learned some piano, but I've always loved the guitar. And so I went to that, and it was just a process of a slow falling in love with jazz. By the time I was an early teen, fell in love with some records by Miles Davis, Eric Dolphy, Dexter Gordon, Wes Montgomery, and this became the path that I just naturally gravitated towards.
Let's listen to our next selection from the album. This is Border Town. Tell us what's the story behind House of the Singing Blossoms? So this is a Sam First record. I understand it's a live performance. What's the whole idea? How did you know, okay, I want to make this album?
Well, Sam First is a really great live venue in Los Angeles, a small jazz club that's located literally at the entrance to LAX airport. It's almost strange. It feels like it's on the campus of LAX, even though it's really its own place, and it's become a kind of a second home for the jazz community over the last few years. There's music there 7 days a week, and they began a a record label over the last few years, um, releasing live performances from the club. And so I was thinking about reconvening this nine-piece band of mine, and I spoke to Dave Robert, who's the artistic director at Sam First, and I said I'd love to do some gigs at Sam First, and he said, okay, glad to book you. And then as we were discussing this, we thought this might make a really, really cool live record, kind of a large band, nine musicians, real big density of sound, a little bit different than presenting a piano trio and recording that. So we got very excited to do it. I wrote a couple of new things, and I wanted to feature music of composers that I really loved, such as the song that you just played, which is Border Town by my friend and mentor, great tenor saxophonist named Benny Wallace. Um, so I wrote a few things, and we convened for a couple of nights at Sam First with this pretty new band, but it's a combination of instrumentation that I've made four albums with before years ago, and I'd kind of stopped. So and as we got into this, I started thinking that these different voices in the band, these different soloists and players were almost like different uh, different facets of a garden that's just blooming, you know. And we were looking, we had recorded the thing. I had a couple of pieces that did not have titles yet, and I was looking for both a title of the album and titles for these pieces. And at the same time, I was reviewing some photographs potentially for the cover of the album. And one photo really struck me. That's made by the founder of Sam First, a guy named Paul Solomon, and it was a picture of a house in the darkness with a light coming out of it, and and these purple blossoms in a garden in the dark, a little nightscape, and I thought, ah, that's it. That's it. There's something here. And I just kind of played around with the imagery in my mind, and I thought House of the Singing Blossoms. These singing blossoms were both evocative of the picture itself, but the voices of the players that I play with and utilize in my compositions to bring the music to life.
Let's listen to our next song. This is Because. Wow, what a lot of fun. So the next question is, how did you decide on these musicians? I imagine probably none of them have the incredible music collection your mother provided you with to in order to hear such very different tunes, have such a musical imagination. How did you pick these people and why nine musicians? Isn't that a lot of people on stage?
Well, nine is fewer than, say, 16 or 18. Let's put it that way. And when I first started writing music years ago for this configuration, the first thought in my mind was that I'd love to have a big band, but that was just felt like it was going to be too daunting of a task and impossible to get gigs and impossible to really just keep going. It was a time actually in Los Angeles where there wasn't a huge community of younger jazz musicians. Um, and so you had to kind of rely on older musicians with big band experience. Putting them together was difficult. Everybody had busy schedules. In terms of finding community, it was a little difficult, but nine piece felt like something I could do. And I had also been really in love with recordings by people like T-Bone Walker, great blues guitarist, B.B. King, um, Clarence Gatemouth Brown, that kind of set their guitar playing in the midst of a small horn section like that. And so that seemed to clue in with something that I felt was doable for me. Um, and then in the ensuing years, really this very large community of younger jazz musicians evolved in Los Angeles as a function of a lot of things, I think, through the late 90s, 2000s, 2010s, just more schools and colleges churning out a really high caliber of young musicians who needed places to go, sometimes finding that New York was too expensive, too this, too that, too dense, whatever. Many people from New York moved to Los Angeles. So suddenly I found, oh, there were these individuals with great musical skill, talent, vision, and individuality that were around that you could call at a moment's notice and put together the band. So that's how the band evolved. And I've always looked for people, as I say, very skilled, uh, very facile on their instruments with great command and an ability to to hear into different kinds of compositions, different natures of compositions. Sometimes we're really swinging, sometimes more introspective, sometimes things are very through composed, sometimes things are involving lots of collective improvisation. And I want to find people who can be almost like actors in a play or in an improvisation that can really respond and be alive. And thankfully, right now, there is a beautiful community of these folks. So uh, Henry Solomon on baritone sax, Bob Reynolds on tenor sax, Nicole McCabe. They're just a perfect sax section, individual voices, but great blend. Alan Ferber is the trombone player. His twin brother is Mark Ferber, who's the drummer. I've been playing with them for many years. Alan is also an incredible composer who has a nonet as well. CJ Camarieri is actually, uh, in some ways, a classical player. He's a member of a group called Y Music, a contemporary classical chamber group. But he's also worked with many pop singer-songwriters, and he went to Juilliard in the jazz department. He's played on a lot of on Broadway shows. It's just incredible breadth of experience. Anna Butters, the bass player, is working right now with Jason Isbell, the singer-songwriter, and is also a part of a band called SML, which is a contemporary improvisation ensemble. And Gerald Clayton, the pianist, is just one of the most formidable pianists working today, and we've been friends for a long time. So each of them has a voice that I love and something to bring of theirs to the music.
Let's listen to the next song. This is uh, Introduction in Yaqui Indian Folk Song. Oh, what fun. So this brings
Hmm.
us to the philosophical part of our conversation, which is entitled Like Father, Like Son. Anthony, in the press release to House of the Singing Blossoms, you are quoted saying, quote, I've been feeling for quite some time that I wanted to revisit the Nonet instrumentation, the whole ethos of the larger ensemble, Wilson explains, is an ethos whose father, band leader Gerald Wilson, understood very well. I'd heard people like B.B. King or Clarence Gatemouth Brown, T-Bone Walker, those kind of guitarists centered in a group with a horn section, he continues. And over a period of years, it kind of opened up, and I learned to have less of a hold over what we were doing, turning it into the kind of ensemble that incorporated improvisation in a more open, natural way. In that quote, you tell us that you learned from B.B. King and company. Tell us the two most important lessons your father Gerald taught you.
Hmm. Well, you know, I've always been inspired by very foundational music. So when I think about those blues musicians, B.B. King, T-Bone Walker, uh, Gatemouth Brown, who your audience is not quite as famous as BB and T-Bone. He was a Texan guitar player who also played fiddle amazingly well. So he could play country music and he could play blues music. These were really important American musicians to me. And there's something in the root and foundation of that music that I always felt very, very drawn to, that I always wanted to make music that felt honest to me. And I think my father, who was a trumpet player and composer who had been born in Mississippi, in a little town called Shelby, Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta, about 90 miles south of Memphis, Tennessee. He was part of that atmosphere as well. These and my father was black, I should say. These were musicians who were part of a time that was extremely transitional for their communities. There was a great deal of migration out of the South, away from segregation, away from a kind of brutal strain of keeping people down. And these were musicians who saw in music and the sound of music and the practice of music a piece of liberation. And and so I think that even before I knew that intellectually, it was something that I gravitated towards in music. And that stays with me. Now, I also want to really tell beautiful, complete musical narrative stories in the compositions that I write. Uh, I I love kind of putting improvisation together and blending it with written music in interesting ways, but that foundational thing stays there. And I think it is something that my father did try to impart to me. Make honest music, be yourself in your music. Let people know who you are through your music. Don't hide behind your music. Don't hide behind your skill. Don't hide behind your ability. Don't create a smoke screen of your ability so that all that people see is how good you are with skill. My father was very, very good, very studied, uh, but it was about you knowing who he was, and I think that's something that he really imparted to me in addition to, he always told me, because he was very, very involved with harmony and obsessed with harmony. And he would say, you need to know your chords. You need to know what's in every single chord you play, and you need to know how to move between every single chord. So there was that piece of, you know, harmonic rigor that he always wanted to impart, as well as this human function of music for people. What we give to each other as individuals is not hiding, but somehow speaking with our own voice.
And most of the time in the conservatory atmosphere, we're heard, I hear a lot, musicians are born, not trained. I get the impression you're saying that then everybody does have actually something to tell. They just have to discover it. Is that right?
That's very well put, and I think it's not. I'm teaching at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, and you know when we think about putting jazz in a program and teaching jazz, there's so much information that has to be that has to be communicated to each of these musicians, um, so that they can graduate with the information and skills to do the job, say, let's say it that way. And then there's this other piece, and how exactly can that be communicated within a program of education? It's not always so easy. It takes a kind of a sensitivity in the faculty. Say you're teaching somebody who does not improvise, that their life is going to be only in playing repertoire they read. At the same time, so their imperative isn't necessarily to impart exactly who they are if they're second violin in a symphony, but still that piece of knowing that there is this kind of human soul function that we, as jazz musicians, we talk about quite a bit. Um, in every program of music, if you're able to communicate that and impart that, I think it can add a very helpful and needed piece for developing musicians for sure. And we're always developing. We never stop. So we need to be reminded.
Let's listen to our last tune from the album. This is Simple Song. So are there any questions, comments? Would anyone like to jump in here? And Anthony's here to answer your questions, hear your comments. Okay. Oh, Dr. Davis has something. Hi, Dr. Davis.
Is he muted?
There you go. I'm unmuted now. Takes me a few minutes to figure that out every time. I like your music. It's very nice. Reminds me of Benny Goodman and people
Oh,
like that. I like
sir,
that harmony that you got in there.
thank you so much.
Keep it up. Keep up the good work.
I will.
Thanks for bringing him on, Sim.
Thanks, Dr. Davis. So final question then from me. What do you wish all of us who listen to this album?
Well, I'm sitting here and you're playing these little excerpts, and you- I have to say that I have a habit. I don't really go back and listen to much of what I make. Sometimes I've so moved on, and sometimes I cringe, or sometimes I think about things I could have done or different decisions I could have made. So sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but you talked about the musicians that I chose and brought along and selected for this journey, and they make it all worthwhile because I can stop paying attention to what I'm doing and just listen to them. And so I've been doing that as you've been playing these excerpts and just listening to the things that they are doing, little choices that they make, the way the drummer was kind of sculpting, and Mark Ferber, the drummer, was sculpting that piece as it evolved from just a two-voice guitar and tenor to when the group sort of adds in as a chorus, and he just sculpts each section so that it grows in the way that I hoped it would as I was composing or arranging the piece. That's actually a composition by a guy named Ben Wendell, a great saxophonist. Um, and just tonal things that Alan Ferber and CJ were doing in the brass, or different ways that the horns were blending, or subtle things that Gerald is playing on the piano. All of those are details that come back and echo or are heard anew in a new listening. So I guess if your audience ends up spending some time with the music, I hope that they do find that kind of recognition of new elements in the music. This is stuff that happens, and this was recorded live in a club, um, and so it happens, uh, as chefs say, à la minute. Right now. It's happening right now, but it lasts. I mean, and Dr. Davis was talking about Benny Goodman. If we think about the great Benny Goodman sextet with Teddy Wilson and Charlie Christian and Lionel Hampton, these recordings that were made, say, in 1939, just just endure, and you listen again and again, and there are things that come out that you never heard. And I wish for the listeners that there will continue to be a reason to return to the recording.
Let's see how we can get it then. So it's easy enough. It's on samfirstrecords.com, which I have placed in the chat room. And again, The House of the Singing Blossoms is the name of the album. You can get it there in digital download for $16.95, or you can buy also the double LP, or you can get an autographed LP. All available on samfirstrecords.com. And if you'd like to reach out to Anthony, you can visit his website, anthonywilsonmusic.com. And Anthony, if we'd like to reach out to you, we can just click on contact.
Yes, it works.
Perfect. So feel free to reach out to Anthony with your questions, with your comments. Again, anthonywilsonmusic.com. Thank you so very much to Anthony Wilson.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
So before we go, I'd like us just to take a look at www.simeonmora.com, where you can find all information about upcoming Vienna Live shows. And I'd like to bring your attention to our sponsorship campaign that's going on right now. For $5 a month, you will receive a Vienna Live Celebrates 5 Years mug. For $10 a month, you will receive one Vienna Live Celebrates 5 Years mug and a Vienna Live City tote bag. Again, it's thanks to our corporate and individual sponsors that Vienna Live can operate as a free public service. There is no minimum sponsorship. If you click on custom, you can sponsor the show for however much you like. All sponsorships are very, very welcome. So again, all information about upcoming shows is available at www.simeonmora.com. And once again, thank you very much to Anthony Wilson. Thank you very much to Vienna Live's corporate and individual sponsors. Your ongoing support allows Vienna Live to operate as a free public service. Thanks to my cousin Mike and a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. Thanks most of all to you, our participants, who make it all worthwhile from Washington, D.C. and San Francisco, California. Goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Bye-bye.